The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Good morning and welcome in. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner with you here. I'm in Kettering, Ohio, to be exact. Well, the guys are holding it down back over in Hamilton. So, gentlemen, good morning. Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett off and rolling here on a Wednesday.
Oh,
We sure are.
it looks like it's about to have there's about to be a tornado outside. I don't know
rapture of sorts.
Yeah, I don't know how the weather looks in Dayton. I imagine it's sunny as always, but over here it looks pretty gloomy.
On my drive-in down the great old 129, you couldn't see more than about, 200 feet in front of your face.
Oh, boy.
The fog was absolutely preposterous this morning. That's probably my least favorite condition to drive in. I can get over the rain, and I know a lot of people slow down in the rain. That's usually when I get the most pissed off.
Yeah.
It's because people go 20 miles under the speed limit because it's spit and rain a little bit. But the fog gets in my head. That's my least favorite weather condition to drive in by a mile. You had some traffic concerns.
Well, I drove in, and this actually wasn't in Hamilton. This was well before Hamilton.
Well, there you go.
One of the power poles had fallen down into the road, and I had to sit in traffic for about 20 minutes. But other than that, it was great.
You've worked here for a while now.
Yeah.
You've yet to find a consistent way to work without backbreaking traffic.
No, it's very rare I get a week where I don't have some sort of thing blocking my route. Usually there's something blocking my route. Now, in the past, it's always been this road leading into Hamilton, but today it was a different one. It was a different pole. So, listen, God bless us all.
Bottom line is we all battle through adversity, and that's
right.
What we love about it.
That's right.
You arrive every day. It doesn't matter what you have to fight through.
It's true. You're right.
You're in that chair, ready to rock here this morning. But we got a lot to get into today. The college football playoff rankings came out last night. We can tell we're getting closer. Again, second to final week of the regular season in college football. Something big happened to Ohio State yesterday and has nothing to do with the rankings. It has everything to do with one of their top players, probably one of their most important players that we never talk about until something bad happens like this that could impact their national championship chances and opportunities. We'll get to all of that coming up around the corner. Joey Galloway, former Buckeye, had a very wild take as far as what Indiana should do, and I think it's quite embarrassing, actually. So we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit as well. Buy or sell. Zach Taylor addressed the media yesterday. Interesting takeaways from that. We'll talk a little Bengals coming up around the corner as well. But let's kick off the show with Elliot's headlines.
Elliot loves three things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
Yes. Headlines on a Tuesday in November. Here we go. So, outside of, I guess I'll end with college basketball, so I'll do UC at the end. NBA scoreboard. Dalton Knecht set the record, or tied the record, for most three-pointers by an NBA rookie. He had 9 of them, 9 threes. The Lakers won 124-118. The Jazz head coach, after the game, a very funny quote. He said, "I think everybody in the gym felt like Dalton Knecht was going to shoot a three, except for the guys on our team." It was a very, very funny quote. But the Lakers win whatever the hell group stage that is in the NBA playoff tournament.
They asked LeBron after the game about the GM and front office getting Knecht in the draft, and he said he doesn't give the front office any credit because the 17 teams that picked in front of them just effed up. If you watched Dalton Knecht play in college, it was obvious he was going to be this good.
Really?
That's what he said.
Especially considering teams are looking for experienced players coming out of college. That could not have been a better draft pick for the Lakers at that point because, there's a lot of talk about them trading that first rounder because what good is a rookie that they're going to have to develop coming in? How much are they really going to help a LeBron-led team with Anthony Davis that's looking to win now? They don't have time to develop a rookie. Dalton Knecht was literally the best player that could have happened to them in that first round because he's an immediate weapon. I loved watching him when he played at Tennessee. I think the kid's
Yeah.
fantastic. He's already off to a great start. So he's fun to watch. He is fun to watch.
I don't understand how that tournament works, so I'm not even going to try to say what round we're in or who plays who next. The Spurs, they beat the Thunder 110 to 104. Mavericks blow out the Pelicans by 40, 132-91. Russell Westbrook becomes the first NBA player with 200 triple-doubles. The very first player ever to have 200 triple-doubles, 122 to 110. Nuggets beat the Grizzlies. Nets, they win by 1 against the Hornets, 116-115. And Justin Kinner has officially cursed the Cleveland Cavaliers. They lose their very first game after Kinner wears a Cavs hoodie to the show. The Cavs lose, unfortunately.
They were down like 20 at half and came back, though.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Kinner, your thoughts on cursing him?
I don't think I could. Look, I've worn that shirt multiple times throughout this 15-game run. So, I mean, my first loss while wearing it throughout the run, I mean, there you go. No, first of all, that was a hell of a game. And that's the first time I've watched a regular season game in a while where I was actually like, man, I got to be home and make sure I have that game on to watch it. It actually lived up to the hype. They were down 20 at half. I'm like, man, well, this is a bad run for the Cavs right here. I saw something that they've played 19 games, or 16 games. This was their 16th game in the first 3 weeks of the season. That's a lot. That's a lot of games in a very short amount of time. They were without Okoro. Garland decided not to show up last night. They were down 20 at half. There's a lot that could have gone wrong for them, and they only lost by a possession. It could have been worse considering how good Boston is. By the way, your guys' thoughts, I hate the floor. I hate these.
Oh,
I hate
it's terrible. No, it's really bad.
I didn't like it.
Most of them are horrendous. I think 1 or 2 of them are fine, but the red or the blue or the green or anything like that, terrible. Play basketball on hard.
I don't really understand why they're doing that. I get like the in-season tournament's great and all, but I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well add like a 4-point shot and just make it a clown sport.
Adam Silver said he wanted fans to turn the TV on and know immediately it was an in-season tournament game.
That's fair.
Since they're scheduled in the middle of the regular season.
That worked because I didn't realize
you know right away.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that aspect, I guess from the branding and the marketing, okay, that's working because I tuned in last night not realizing it was one of those games. And then as soon as I saw the floor, that's when it kind of popped in my head. So, Adam Silver, kudos. It worked. I don't like it nonetheless. But continue on.
Find another way.
I feel like you could just put it on the scoreboard.
Yeah, find another way.
To each their own. All right. So, notable games yesterday in college basketball. How about this? I bet on Canisius. The spread was plus 38.5. Plus 38.5. They were taking on Maryland. Maryland won this game 108 to 37. 108. They lost by 70. I had them plus 38.5. Almost. It's not a notable game. It's just I had to mention it.
No, that is a notable headline.
I watched it last night, and I was like, at one point, I think it was 42 to 6. I'm not even kidding. I think it was 42 to 6. And yikes. Okay. Other actual ones. UConn beat TAMUC. I don't know who that is. Texas A&M University Christian? Who would that be?
1C or 2Cs?
1C. Who would that be, Justin? I don't know. 81-46 the final, though. Florida beat Florida A&M 84-60. 15th ranked Marquette. They take down 6th ranked Purdue 76-58, blew them out of the gym. Kansas, they were, I think, up 4 points against Wilmington, UNCW, at half. They ended up winning this game by 20, almost, 18 points, but still pretty exciting there. Kentucky, 97-68 the final against Lipscomb. And the biggest matchup of the night, the University of Cincinnati, the Bearcats, they take down Northern Kentucky 76-60 on the road. Those are your sports headlines. I didn't see a ton else, but those are just what I have.
So that matchup last night, Cincinnati at Northern Kentucky, those are always fun matchups because you rarely see, especially now that Cincinnati's a high major, even though I've always considered them to be like basketball is weird. I've always loved the American Conference. It's one of my favorite college basketball conferences out there. Obviously, with a lot of those teams moving out, obviously it's not as interesting. But when they had Houston and they had Wichita State and Cincinnati, that was an SMU. That was a great basketball conference. But seeing them play at Northern Kentucky, it's a double-edged sword because I want to see more high major teams play at mid-major schools. It looks unique. It's different. But last night's a prime example of why those teams don't do that. When you go play a mid-major on their home floor, it's not that the talent gap closes. It's obviously the whole flow of the game completely changes. Cincinnati obviously got it together in the second half, but man, give Northern Kentucky credit. Their home floor, playing on their home floor, that probably doesn't happen against a top 25 team if they're at Cincinnati in that particular situation. But when mid-majors win, when they knock off teams on their home floor, when the rare occasion does happen, that right there just makes it even more difficult for mid-majors to ever get high major programs to come in. It just doesn't make good business, or trying to position yourself to get a good resume for the NCAA tournament. I hate that. But it is what it is at this point. UC probably will never play at Northern Kentucky again once that contract runs out. Elliot, is that contract done? Was that the last one of that run?
Yep, they inherited that contract. And speaking of this contract, Wes Miller talked exactly about this after the game and how he's kind of, he was grateful that they had that experience because it doesn't happen in college basketball anymore. You don't see a team like a ranked team go on the road and take a mid-major like this. So, Casey, I believe we have the clip of Wes Miller post-game discussing this very exact thing.
To come play a really, really good mid-major team on the road is way more difficult than any algorithm will give you credit for, and every coach knows it. And that's why people will avoid it at all costs. As everybody in here knows, this is a contract that goes back a long time, and we inherited it. But because of the way the rules are, we're not doing games like this. And I wish they would change them because it's so good for our team. I thought this was good for us tonight.
And again, that was Wes Miller, head coach of the Bearcats. Elliot, I know you set that in. But, yeah, I appreciate that too. Teams can get out of those contracts, Elliot. Teams can get out of those contracts. I give credit to Cincinnati for not buying their way out of that because they could have easily bought themselves out of that contract, especially – you want to care about optics. You're a Big 12 team now. You don't want to go on the road to play a Horizon League school. I give credit to Wes Miller and Cincinnati because they could have easily bought themselves out of that contract, but they adhered to it. I thought that was pretty cool.
They especially could have done it after losing one of the games in this series. So there was a lot of reason to not play this year. They stuck with it. We had to play at Truist Arena or BB, whatever it was before.
BB&T or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever it was before this, we had to play there for a season. So this is why we did it, and I'm happy to see the Bearcats. It wasn't we won by 18 points, but it didn't look like that at all. Pretty much until the last 2 minutes of the game. So they were able to dominate, and it was a hell of a win by the Bearcats.
Yeah, again, it was
0-4, by the way, 0-4 for the Norsemen.
Yeah, that's the line was Cincinnati 13.5, and obviously they barely covered 76-60 the final. But it looked like NKU was about to cover. Couldn't pull it off though, nonetheless. But that wraps it up for the opening segment. Again, Elliot's headlines right there. Anything else stand out to you guys last night in the world of sports? Obviously, Jacob, anything catch your attention outside of the playoff rankings reveal and everything?
Yeah, two more bigger headlines that kind of trickled in this morning. Florida Atlantic released their list of potential head coach candidates, and the headliner was Ray Lewis, just because of how Deion Sanders has done taking over Colorado and the transition from the HBCU up into the Power Four and doing a really good job. I think we might see a lot more teams do this. I mean, Colorado has how many Hall of Famers on their staff right now? I wouldn't be surprised if some of those lower teams around the country grab some of those guys to fill the coaching roles. Something to definitely keep an eye on as some of those smaller jobs in semi-desirable cities open up. Maybe getting a guy like a Deion Sanders or a Ray Lewis is a way to capitalize on a Boulder, Colorado, or a Boca Raton, Florida. You get guys that want to come play for those legendary athletes. Maybe that's a new path that some of these schools will go in. The only other thing that came out this morning that I thought was pretty interesting, the 25 modern era players that are semifinalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025 were released, headlined by local guy, bomber Luke Kuechly, Eli Manning, Steve Smith Sr., Adam Vinatieri, Terrell Suggs, and a ton of other great names. This is really the first class of Hall of Famers where I remember watching more of them than I don't. Yeah. Where it really makes me feel old and, kind of coming of age as a sports fan. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, you're old. 23.
We're getting there.
35, baby. 35.
Did Kent State lose again yesterday?
They did.
No.
10-point underdogs. This was probably their best chance. They fell 38-17 to Akron. They'll have one more shot They go to Buffalo on the final week of the year. Buffalo is 6-4, I believe, headed to the MAC championship, if I'm not mistaken. So not looking great for the Fighting Golden Flashes, sitting at 0-11, 12th in the MAC. I don't believe they've led this year.
Really?
Ooh.
No,
Not bad.
wait, that's not right. Didn't they lead last night?
They lost 38-17. They didn't. I don't think they led going into 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I don't think so. Maybe they did.
I thought they scored first. I think they scored first.
They
last
scored
night.
first.
I've
If they scored first, it might have been their first lead of the year.
Okay, I was gonna say I think they scored first actually last night.
They were down 10-7 at the end of the first quarter.
Okay.
So maybe.
You mentioned Ray Lewis a little bit ago, Jake. Another coach to keep an eye on. Former NFL player that was really good. Former Buckeye Eddie George.
Yeah.
In the HBCU ranks as well. Eddie George is at Tennessee State. I think it's his second or third year there, but they're 8-3, most wins at that school since 2013. Eddie George could potentially be on the radar for some jobs in the near future as well, especially considering what Deion's doing there. If Ray Lewis goes on to have
Absolutely.
success. And Florida Atlantic has got some interesting coaches over the years. I mean, people forget Lane Kiffin was the head coach there a few years ago. I remember Justin Fields' very first game as a Buckeye was against Florida Atlantic, and I remember being on the field for that game, and just that's Lane Kiffin. That walked by, didn't even process or realize that Lane Kiffin was coaching there. But they've gotten some unique names to coach out there nonetheless. But all right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. College football, we didn't touch much on it yesterday. Obviously, the last couple of days been very NFL heavy. Appreciate Jay Morrison coming on the show yesterday. If you missed that, it's all over the Chatterbox Sports social, so go check that out. But we'll step away for a few moments. Rankings reveal last night, and I could tell it's that time of year. No one really had any hot takes regarding the first couple polls, but did you notice the temperature started to heat up last night? A lot of people pissed off, with the committee. People are frustrated that nothing's making sense. We should have seen this coming. It's not surprising at all. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. Psychopath. Who does that? Who does that? Mouse Cop. What the hell?
So what Kinner is, and welcome into ESPN 1410 AM. We are Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm in our Discord, and for those who are new to the social media, and if you don't have one, I don't really use Discord ever. This is one of the most crazy things I think I've ever seen. I've never even, I don't even know how he did it, if we're going to be honest. Nor how did he
This
have the,
took time.
This took years. So Mouse Cop went back, and for those of you who've watched Off the Bench for a while now, know Justin Kinner has been a part of the program for several months, many months actually now. I think dating back to, what is that, July? Is that right?
I believe so.
So since July, our good friend Mouse Cop has went back, and he has screenshotted
Mouse Cop says since July 1st.
every single outfit that Justin Kinner has worn. Every single one. And I can't, there's no way to like properly show you. It goes forever.
He didn't miss a day.
He noted when Kinner wouldn't show up. I have all the Kinner no-shows as well on this document. Every single outfit does not have a Cavaliers hoodie except for yesterday. Except for yesterday's show, which then ended the Cavaliers' 15-0 record. I'm scrolling through it right now, and he's right. I mean, you've never worn anything close to it.
I was really, really hoping I was going to see another one. I was rooting for Kenner. I really was.
I was hoping too. It's not. I mean, look, this isn't like a thing to lie about. I mean, I got it wrong, obviously, but like, it's not like it's hoodie gate. I mean, what are we doing?
I think it is hoodie gate.
I mean, yeah.
This is crazy. This is crazy.
I mean, we're laughing, but this is like creepy, stalkerish behavior. I mean, like, let's be real.
I don't know if it is. You're in the public eye. You're in the public eye, Justin.
If he proved that you had never worn the hoodie before in your life by producing pictures of you in and outside of your home, that would have been creepy and stalkerish.
Would have been funnier. It would have been way funnier. But yeah,
he filmed you walking into the TJ Maxx yesterday.
Like, most adults have a job. Most adults have a girlfriend or a wife or kids or a life. Most adults don't have time to go do all this. Man, like, once he loses his virginity, I mean, he's going to be so distracted. No, because these morons think they can do whatever they want, and we just have to.
They are not morons. They are good.
They are geniuses.
They are good humans.
Not they, him or her or they. I'm not really sure what he is. I have no idea. All right, but that's where we're at. So.
Kenner. Oh, sweet Kenner.
Do we have to take another break?
I feel like take a break.
Do you want this over? Can this go over the radio? Is this okay?
This is definitely going over the radio. I'm not hiding anything.
Okay. All right. Okay.
My life's in hopes and work, apparently. So,
okay. I have some super chats. So I guess this is how we'll get off this topic.
Oh, let Casey read the first one.
Okay.
Casey's been waiting for this one.
Let's see. The first super chat.
It's from Rob.
$2. In Jim Mora's voice. Playoffs. I wish I could have appropriately put that in the title and the thumbnail today, but I wasn't able to. So
you tried.
I tried. I was thinking of ways, just didn't come across right. So
you can't read that without putting dash Jim Mora, which would have ruined the title of the video.
Right. Next super
I
chat.
like the Ratbird version of playoffs better. Elliot's Ratbird version.
Playoffs.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
I thought we would never hear that either.
No, thank you.
We got
it back.
We got blessed with it.
The death of the Ratbird lasted about 24 hours.
Next super chat, Justin Edgel. I guess Xavier doesn't make basketball players go to class. Interesting. Mr. Mo, member for 12 months. This is why we don't like Kenner at all. Because of him lying about his Cavs hoodie. And Everett says stop lying. So
I have worn it before, obviously just not on the show, but I'm trying. It is what it is.
You tried your best. And the Cavaliers paid for it. It's unfortunate, really, what you've done. It's unfortunate.
Better luck to them next time. I'll make sure I'm going to wear it next. I don't know when they play next. I'll make sure I line it up to wear that hoodie once again.
Right.
College football playoff rankings came out last night. Everyone frustrated, everyone upset. Why is Texas so as high as they are? Everyone talking about Indiana not playing anybody. Texas, their resume is really not any better. What we thought was a sexy win going to the big house and dominating at Michigan early in the season. Turns out that that's really not as good a win as what you would like it to be. Jake, I know you're a big college football guy. Some of the biggest takeaways last night when those rankings came out. How'd you feel?
I thought it was pretty much what I expected. I mean, more or less, I don't expect the committee to get it right ever at this point. And the most concerning thing that happened last night wasn't 1 through 25. The most concerning thing that happened last night was after the rankings were released, Ward Manuel, the head of the committee, as he always does, joined the ESPN rankings show. And they asked him, Ward, what are you using to create these rankings? Because it doesn't seem like you have a consistent formula 1 through 25. It seems like different tiebreakers are being used at different points, wherever it's advantageous for whatever point the committee's trying to push at that time. Ward Manuel answered and said, all we're basing the rankings on is film. That's the most concerning thing by far, because somehow this committee is sitting there and watching film and seeing something completely different than every other person in the country. If they're truly using film, then we have a lot more problems with this system than we've ever seen before. But the biggest issue that I saw when it comes to the teams last night was Miami at 8. A lot of people were circling Alabama and jumping Miami when Miami was on the bye. Alabama should have been over Miami last week. Miami should be behind all those SEC teams and Boise State and SMU. It makes no sense to me that they're at 8. They haven't beaten anybody. SMU has a better resume than them. All those SEC teams have lost to ranked teams. Boise State's only loss is to number 1 Oregon. And Miami's had one-score games against unranked teams all year. They lost to an unranked team. Just not a great team who's being bolstered by a great quarterback and an early season resume against teams that have fallen out since. Miami being at 8 is trying to save the college football playoff from having to put 2 Big 12 teams in, which is the other thing I noticed last night. If BYU was actually the 6th ranked team 2 weeks ago, one loss dropping them to 14 makes absolutely no sense. If you have BYU ahead of SMU, Boise State, and any collection of those SEC teams, you're leaving the door open for things to not go your way, Colorado win the Big 12 championship, and you have to put 2 Big 12 teams in. By putting BYU at 14, you keep that door closed, and you only have to put 1 Big 12 team in, which is going to allow them to put in all those SEC teams. I think they're setting this up very, very carefully to protect themselves out of some different opportunities of things that could happen down the line. But Miami's the big one that sticks out. Texas is a brand that, would you like them to be lower than 3? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Absolutely not. The conversation around 3, 4, 5 should be the exact same. Now, everyone's talking about Indiana, but that's no different than Penn State or Texas. I think they're all the exact same team to me. They're all ranked way too high. Sadly, we'll only get to see Indiana try to prove it the rest of the year. Texas will play A&M. I expect them to lose that game and not make the SEC championship. And then we have a conversation about 2-loss Texas with no quality wins. Do they even get in? So certainly interesting setup the rest of the year, but not a lot of surprises. And with 2 weeks left, most of it will take care of itself.
How easy would Georgia get to the semifinals?
In the current bracket?
In the current bracket. They would play Penn State. They play Penn State first. It would be at Penn State, to be fair. Then it would be against Miami, at Miami, and then against either Texas, Indiana, or Ole Miss. But it would be Penn State and then Miami. I think they walk.
That wasn't even the one I was circling. Look at Ohio State's path.
Ohio State would have to beat BYU and then Boise.
The spreads for those first-round matchups were released last night. Obviously, you can't bet them yet. They're not actual games. But what they would be right now, at least according to whoever does that kind of stuff. And I told Casey this morning, if those spreads are correct, I won't be working at this company after the first round of the playoff.
Yeah.
Ole Miss at Indiana, Georgia at Penn State, and Alabama at Notre Dame, all pick-em spreads. Those 3 SEC teams would win those 3 games by a combined 100 points. It wouldn't even be close. Those spreads aren't even close to what they would actually be. I think after these next few weeks shake out, we'll see, how a lot of these teams are playing. At that point, Ohio State was slated as a 24-point favorite over BYU.
Could Ohio State stay in that 5 spot, or they definitely wouldn't, right? Because they would if they win the conference.
I think they could, because if they win the conference, they would get the bye. If they lose the conference and a 2-loss team wins the SEC, I think that they'll still be the 5.
You would want them to be the 5, right?
5 is the best spot to be in this entire bracket, by a mile, no question about it. You get the 5th conference champion, and then you get the 4th conference champion. The 2 worst teams probably in the whole bracket this year.
You would only host 1 playoff game, though.
You would host BYU, and that'd be it. But everyone would only host 1 playoff game.
Okay, you're right.
The second round's bowl games.
It really is the best spot because you get to host the game, play the, I guess, weakest is fair, all right? Maybe in this bracket. That would be most brackets, right? It's always going to be that tweener team that they'd be going up against as far as that's concerned, and they would get to host it. I like the 5 spot for Ohio State if they are in a position to, of course, win the Big Ten championship. And then, of course, what that does at that point, if they lose a close one to Oregon, they probably still stay at that 5.
I would agree.
Right?
Assuming a 2-loss team wins the SEC. I think if you lose that game, you could be in a tough spot if you have 2-loss Texas coming out of that SEC championship game. They could get the 5 ahead of you.
Yeah.
I think if it's 2-loss Ohio or Alabama against 2-loss A&M or something along those lines, Ohio State will basically be locked into that 5 or the bye. Do you think Ohio State would be out with a loss this weekend?
Oh, with this weekend? Man.
No.
They would have the Penn State win would still save them.
How would you get Penn State in and Ohio State out? Penn State didn't play Oregon, didn't play Indiana. Ohio State went to Happy Valley and won by a touchdown. I know they haven't cared about head-to-head all year. I think that's a unique situation where it might actually come into play. I know Ohio State would have 2 losses and Penn State would only have 1. I think that's a really hard thing to justify. if Penn State has a pretty bad strength of schedule, losing their only meaningful game. Ohio State drops 2 of their 3 meaningful games, but they still beat that team. I think that's the conundrum the committee wants to avoid the most.
Yep, and Ohio State, the only team to have 3 top 5 matchups on the season as well. That schedule, obviously, not working against them. I think it helps them because even while stubbing your toe against that schedule, the committee's still respecting the fact that, okay, you've played one of the more difficult schedules out there. Now, again, we look at this Indiana, we look at this Ohio State matchup. Was it just propped up for Indiana to get this top 5 matchup? I mean, how much does the committee truly value Indiana? Because that's going to be the thing, too. The committee's in a win-win when it comes to this Indiana thing. If Ohio State, and we're going to talk about this Ohio State-Indiana matchup more in a moment, but if Ohio State blows out Indiana, the committee feels comfortable possibly bumping them out of the way. If Indiana beats Ohio State, they can comfortably keep them where they're at or bump them up, and it's justified because they just beat Ohio State. So the committee will get bailed out one way or another. I am fascinated to see what happens if Ohio State wins by a field goal or a touchdown and maybe even 10 points at the least. A good loss. Their schedule's been atrocious. How much weight will they put with a good loss? Because a good loss carried Ohio State for most of the season until they played Penn State. And I think that matters as we sit here right now when we talk about the Indiana matchup, which we'll get to more in a moment. But I think that right now, what I dislike the most, I still, Jake and Elliot, I hate the conference champion getting the auto bids. Just the seeding all the way to the bye. That is really the big holdup with all of this because you're force feeding teams that shouldn't be that high just because, they're a conference champion of a bad conference and you're force feeding them into it and it just doesn't look right. I mean, Ohio State's going to benefit from that, but that's what I'm not a fan of. But I get they were trying to make the conference championships mean something, and now they're forcing it. So
do you think a 3-loss SEC conference loser is locked into the playoff? If Alabama wins out, goes to the conference championship, loses, they're 10-3. I think they'd have to be in. Otherwise, Greg Sankey would burn down the playoff office. Like, you can't have the second best team in a conference, that conference, not be in the playoff. They're certainly a top 12 team, and you're punishing them for playing an extra game while the other 3 or 4 SEC teams are sitting at home with 2 losses.
If that conference championship game should be a situation where it can only help you. Like, there's no way that can actually hurt your resume.
We heard Lane Kiffin talk last night that he said that he talked to other SEC coaches, and their sentiment with some coaches that it is better to miss the SEC championship game if you have 2 losses because we don't know what the committee will do, and you're potentially playing for a bye or out when you could just take the bye the SEC championship weekend then play at home.
Yeah.
I also wonder if there's a world in the near future, if that loser does get on the outside looking in, that these major conferences abolish the championship game. Take that as a bye, bypass the bye round in the first round, take 4 home games, give the championship to the leading after the regular season and call it a day.
I agree. And there's going to be a lot that comes. I think the first year of this 12-team playoff, there's going to be a lot of changes that come. For one, how much do people value the conference championship, even though we were told that you have to? And the other is, why do we need to keep putting tough teams in our non-con? Why do we need to keep doing? Because if Indiana loses to Ohio State and gets in, if I'm any team out there, if I'm even those mid teams, if I'm a Wisconsin, okay, if I'm Ole Miss, if I'm anyone, I'm not challenging myself even one tiny bit in the non-con. Because all that matters is the strength of schedule clearly doesn't matter no matter how much they want to pick and choose when to use it. Indiana is going to be a great test for that, a measuring stick for just how much they value strength of schedule. Or is it, okay, we're just going to value wins? I don't think all wins are equal, obviously, just like I don't think all losses are equal. That's what makes this so fascinating. It's a perfect storm of a mess. They'll give you, I know you mentioned earlier, Jake, you said they watched the film or whatever it is. They throw out 10 bullet points of things that they look for. And then they'll use 3 bullet points to justify their decision for this team. They'll use 3 completely separate bullet points for how they justify where they put this team. And there's not a set criteria blueprint for every single season. And that's what always makes this so fascinating. There's so many talking points, so many arguments out there. But this is what they want. This is what they want you to argue about it. They want you to talk about it. I still think sometimes they tinker with this too, just to get us talking, knowing that if that was the final one last night, is that how it would look? I don't think so. I think that it's easy just to manipulate it a bit to get people talking, and then in the last one, take it serious. We're seeing it already. They're moving teams all over the place. Miami didn't even play. They moved back. Alabama, kudos to them. You play a bad team, you better make them look bad. They made Mercer, whoever it was, they embarrassed them, and they moved up. Like, they're just moving all these pieces around. I don't mind it. I like talking about it, but man, it's going to be fun when that final one comes out and everyone loses their mind.
Yesterday, it was announced that Texas scheduled a home-and-home with Notre Dame, and that blew my mind. You should never schedule big-time games. You gain nothing. People in the chat asking, why did Alabama schedule Mercer? Why wouldn't you schedule 3 FCS teams when you can? The committee doesn't care about strength of schedule. They don't care who you play. If you have an opportunity to lose a game, that can only hurt you. Playing good teams doesn't help you anymore in the 12-team playoff, and that's part of the reason why I didn't like the 12-team playoff. You're disincentivizing the non-conference. There's zero reason to go play ranked teams before your conference schedule, especially if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten and you have to go play 3 or 4 ranked teams during the season if you get a bad draw on that rotating schedule. With expansion, there is zero reason to play a decent team in the non-conference. It's going to keep some really good teams out. They're not caring about strength of schedule, so we're going to put 3 or 4 teams in the playoff that we know cannot win a national championship just because they won 10 of their 12 games against horrible competition, but because someone played 4 top 10 teams and went 9-3, we're going to keep them at home when everyone in the country knows that they can compete and hold the trophy at the end of the year. That's ridiculous to me. We want 12 teams that can win a national championship, and we play the games to figure out who those teams are. And you can figure that out in a different way than wins and losses. You have to look deeper into the schedules teams are playing, especially with these rotating schedules, because the conferences no longer are on an equal playing field. Look what Georgia's done this year compared to Texas. Both SEC schools, Georgia's played 3 top 10 teams all on the road. Texas doesn't even have a ranked win. It's crazy what's going on in college football right now. They're picking and choosing their battles to get big brands in and hurt other teams, and they don't care about strength of schedule where it's advantageous to them or where they think people will get mad in the case of Indiana and Texas right here.
All right, we'll step away for a few moments. Because of all of this, you're hearing Lane Kiffin, as you mentioned, say, man, there's some coaches who don't even want to play in the conference championship game because of the ramifications of it. That's a funny, weird thing to say. There's another thing that was said last night that I find to be even stranger, and it's because people are starting to notice you can maybe manipulate the mindsets of the committee. Joey Galloway had one of the wildest takes of what Indiana should do heading into this matchup with Ohio State to potentially put them in position to make the playoff, even if they get blown out on Saturday. We'll talk about that when we come back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, continuing on with this college football conversation, Ohio State, Indiana coming up. Ohio State's 3rd top 5 matchup of the season. Joey Galloway last night, to kind of continue on our playoff scenarios here, he had the wildest take as far as what Indiana needs to do to get into the playoff. And it was not, man, they need to beat Ohio State to get into the playoff. It wasn't, man, if they just, hang in there, lose by possession or 2, maybe, it wasn't even that suggestion. This was one of the most big-time loser suggestions I've ever heard of in my entire life. Take a listen. Former Buckhead Joey Galloway said that Indiana should consider doing this if they want a chance to make the college football playoff.
Can't go any higher.
They are behind a one-loss
They have
team.
a chance to go on the road and prove what they are. Now, honestly, if we believe in what our metrics are saying, if I'm Indiana, I don't know if I'm playing Rourke against Ohio State. We've seen what happened to Florida State last year, Jordan Travis. What could keep Indiana out of this? Getting their quarterback hurt. We've seen it happen to Florida State last year. Having not played anybody.
Or losing by 30
if you look at 3, 4, and 5, Texas, Penn State, and Indiana, they literally have played nobody between all 3 teams. The toughest team in that is Vandy. So a lot of this that we're looking at is eye test. They can't go.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Sit your quarterback that has put up fantastic numbers, that has helped lead you to this undefeated record, to set up this top 5 showdown with Ohio State. Indiana's never been ranked this high before. They've never won 10 games before. They've never been 10-0 before. They have a chance to put the entire world on notice that Indiana, although will always can be considered a basketball school, will prove to everyone that their football program is legitimate. They just extended Curt Cignetti, of course, who they feel like they have a real head coach to go out and compete and recruit with the best teams in the Big Ten and the country. And you're going to get to this stage, to this level, for some people, the first time they've probably stopped what they're doing to go watch Indiana football, and you're going to say, hey, we're going to keep our quarterback out against Ohio State. If Rourke goes out there and has success against Ohio State, he's going to be a big-time superstar name in all of college football, and Indiana will become a legitimate talking point, big brand in this. I still think at 10-0, as high of a ranking as they have, I don't think they have the respect of the college football world just yet. They have a chance to prove that on Saturday, and you want to sit your quarterback out and risk getting beat by 30 even more, and then having everyone check out on you no matter who your quarterback is. I can't believe Joey Galloway said that, and kudos to the panel. There was more to that. The panel, everyone just said, yeah, that's outrageous. That's the look that everyone gave him was the look I got when I suggested my draft take back in July or whatever it was. That's how crazy it was. That's a wild take by Joey Galloway. Absolutely insane.
It felt like that he was more taking just a shot at the committee more than anything. At least that's how I took it. I don't think he actually – I mean, maybe he does. I don't think he actually would recommend –
How much Joey Galloway have you watched in your life?
Well, not a lot.
Because I think this is just kind of online for him.
Well, if it was a real suggestion to bench your quarterback.
What if I told you the next commercial break he doubled down on it?
Yeah, he said it. Yes, thank you.
He said it a
Thank
second
you.
time.
Then I guess I can't say. Then I can't say boo about it. Florida State. The Florida State situation lives rent free in my head because you negated an entire season because of one player, right? Or one skill position. You eliminate that position, the rest of the team, whatever accomplishment that they had, didn't matter. So in a way, this does make it does make sense. But again, it doesn't make sense if you're trying to actually play in the playoff, because if you lose by 50, what does that prove? That proves nothing, and you just lose. Is what he was saying because of injury? Is that what was going on?
He was saying that the crux of the point was Ohio State is going to beat Indiana so bad this weekend that Curtis Rourke might get hurt in the game.
Okay.
And if they lose the game with Curtis Rourke injured, they'll be out. If they lose the game with Curtis Rourke healthy, they'll still be in. In a vacuum, I agree. I think if they lose the game by 3 and Curtis Rourke has a broken leg, they're definitely out of the playoffs. If they lose by 3 and he's healthy, they can probably still be in. But you don't have a chance to win the game without Curtis Rourke. And I think if you ask Curt Cignetti in the Indiana locker room sitting at 10-0, number 5 in the country, you probably believe you can win the football game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the crazier suggestions I've ever heard watching live TV. I rewound it and listened again because I couldn't believe it.
If that was a take to make fun of Kirk Herbstreit and the College Football Committee, then yeah, I support it. But if it was an actual suggestion to bench your quarterback with an undefeated season heading into your biggest game of the season, then your brain needs some help.
Yeah, and again, but these are the things that people are doing, the mental gymnastics that everyone's doing, is because no one trusts the committee. Right. We don't understand their mindset on a week-to-week basis. And that's why those crazy scenarios are being thrown out there. That's why Lane Kiffin and multiple, Power 5 head coaches, Power 4 head coaches are coming together saying, you know what, as much as we would love to win a conference championship, I don't want to risk playing an extra game and, risking missing the playoff. I made the example, Kevin and I did the show yesterday, and I said, imagine right now, if you're Lane Kiffin, because everyone right now is ripping Lane Kiffin for saying this. If Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss feel that they have a for sure shot to make the playoff without having to play in a conference championship game, it's basically like cashing out. You have $1,000 in your hand right now. Or you continue the parlay and have a chance to win $3,000. But if your parlay doesn't hit, now you're out all of the money altogether. That's basically what this is. You have a guaranteed playoff spot in your hands. But if you hold on just a little longer, not only will you make the playoff, you'll be conference champions with the bye as well. But if you lose that game, now you're totally out of the playoffs and you don't have a conference championship and you're completely out of it. It is almost a big-time gamble to go play in your conference championship game. I've got ripped in the past for questioning, the importance of a conference championship game. I would pick being in the playoff without a bye than risking losing in a conference championship to get a bye that I don't know how much benefit it truly gives you. I get you play one less game, But I don't know, but it's wild. The mental gymnastics.
You don't play one less game. You don't play one less game if you miss the SEC championship.
Oh, you're right.
If you miss the conference championship, you play the same exact amount of games as the team that got the bye. The worst case scenario is to lose the SEC or conference, not just SEC, to lose a conference championship, and you play an extra game. That's the nightmare scenario. I think it's absolutely advantageous for almost every team in the country to miss their conference championship game. If you think you can get in the playoffs without making the conference championship, you should be rooting for the route to have you miss the championship. Every conference has their little playoff machine thing now to figure out who gets in. And for the last 25 years, we've been trying to use it to figure out how to get your team in. Start using it to get your team out because you don't want to play in these games.
Okay, now let me call you out on something. You say that fine. you I think you're both on the side of it. No, Kinner might be on my side actually on this. You say, Jacob, that bowl games don't matter.
No, I love bowl games.
Sorry, you say bowl games do matter. I say bowl games don't matter. Why wouldn't a conference championship game matter just as much as a bowl game?
Oh, a conference championship matters a ton to the program. But I'm saying to win a championship, I think you have a better chance without having the bye.
But, I feel like you'd want to – I mean, nobody would willingly not play in that championship.
Well, no, and I'm not a Division I athlete with that much of a competitor.
You were on the team, though. You were on Alabama.
I was. They interviewed Tyler Booker. And that's true. They interviewed Tyler Booker, Alabama's captain, All-American guard, about just that. They asked him, a lot of conversation has been that Alabama would be better off missing the championship, and their situation right now is basically exactly what I'm talking about. They already have 2 losses. They could be looking at losing and being out. So it could be bye or out if you play in that SEC championship game.
Yeah.
Tyler Booker said, we understand that part of it, but we here at Alabama, we care about 2 things at the start of every year. It's winning an SEC championship and winning a national championship, and the new format hasn't changed that. So I think you're absolutely right for players and coaches, but as a fan looking ahead to try to win a national championship, I think it's more advantageous to miss that game.
It's fair.
Here's the other thing, too. Joey Galloway's take is just so wild because that's a regular season game. You need the Indiana. You're not a lock. You have to compete. I'm not even saying you have to win. I mean, you might have to win, but I think if you just compete to show that you're on the same level as Ohio State, which many people mock that idea that they're even close, they need that. But Jake, let me ask you, Ohio State. You asked earlier, do we think that they're a lock? Or do you think that they're a lock? They need to beat Indiana, yes. But if they lose to Oregon again by a field goal or a touchdown in the Big Ten championship game, are they a lock to make the playoff?
Absolutely in that scenario. I'm not as convinced that Ohio State's a lock if they lose to Indiana. But if they lose to Oregon and they finish, what would that be, 11-2? Yeah, absolutely locked in. And I think still the 5.
And see, that's a prime example right there of what Lane Kiffin's talking about. If you're Ohio State, you throttle Indiana on Saturday. You still have to take care of Michigan. It's not like the season's done after Indiana by any means, but let's just assume you take care of Michigan, you take care of Indiana convincingly, you're in the Big Ten championship game. It's we're already in the playoff. And I could lose the Big Ten championship game and still be okay. But here's where the Florida State thing I agree with. Ohio State will not miss the playoff if their star quarterback gets hurt in that Big Ten championship game, but why risk it? You're without your number one you're without 3 starting offensive linemen. 3. And right now, if you're Ohio State and you have Will Howard or you have any of your star running backs or Jeremiah Smith, I don't know if I want to risk any of them getting hurt in I know this sounds crazy, meaningless conference championship game. Because if any of those guys get hurt in that conference championship game, they got hurt for nothing.
You're
outside
right.
of the program winning a title. You need those players to go win in the playoffs, not the conference title. You think anyone's going to forgive Ryan Day with a Big Ten conference championship, but they get knocked out by Boise or BYU right off the bat? You think people are going to forgive Ryan Day for that? They won't. I love all the stuff that's happening with this. It's creating all these wild scenarios and wild takes. It is what it is. But yeah, Ohio State's going to find themselves in that predicament as well. That's the closest example to Florida State, Elliot, as you mentioned, from last year, where Florida State didn't technically need that conference championship to make the playoff, but because they played in it, they risked everything, lost their star quarterback, and ultimately lost a spot in the playoff. You can risk way more than you gain playing in some of these conference title games.
Justin, as a Buckeye fan, would you rather have to play the winner of Alabama Notre Dame or BYU in the shoe and then a neutral site game against Boise State?
I'll go with B. Let's go with B, option B.
Pretty clearly. I know it's an extra game, but there's no doubt in my mind I'd rather play those 2 games than that 1 game. And that's being the 5 versus being the number 1 overall seed. I really just don't see a way that the bye is overly advantageous to playing a home game in the first round.
Yeah.
If you're in a spot where Alabama's in, when you're talking about potentially going on the road versus getting the bye, you certainly are playing to win. But the situation Kinner's talking about there, I think absolutely we might see teams sitting people in conference championship games if you can talk the players into it. I mean, it's the same conversation we had with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor yesterday when talking about sitting him and protecting him. It's one thing to understand the rationale to protect your player. It's another thing to talk these top-tier competitors into actually sitting on the bench in a game that they're trying to win. So I don't think it's likely, but does it make sense to win a championship? Absolutely.
All right, speaking of Zach Taylor, speaking of Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor, we're going to transition over to the Bengals now. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, Zach Taylor addressed the media yesterday. Of course, it's the first time he's addressed the media since the loss on Sunday night against the Chargers. Players gone, as Jay Morrison told us yesterday. They've all headed out. Well, most of them anyways. Most of them are out for the week. They didn't have player availability to the media, but they did catch up with Zach Taylor yesterday to talk about the 2-week break between now and when they play the Steelers coming up here around the corner. We'll talk about that press conference and have a few clips for you when we come back. Zach Taylor's really good at the press conferences. The reason I know he's really good at the press conferences is because he says the same thing every time, and he pisses everyone off in the press conference because he doesn't give them anything. I don't know what you expect him to say in these press conferences, but he's not giving it to you. It kind of reminds me of David Bell a little bit. Isn't it kind of eerie? There are some similarities between Bell and Zach Taylor. There is some similarities in some of the criticisms that people have for both, but I don't know how much you guys got to catch of Zach Taylor in that press conference yesterday, but we'll kick it off right away. Zach Taylor was asked about the urgency that this team has right now. Obviously, you guys have kind of counted them out from the playoffs. A lot of people have that 7th loss already before we even get to December. Has a lot of people doubting that they can get on a hot streak to win enough games to keep them in the hunt. But the urgency to win, Zach Taylor was asked about that yesterday by the media. Take a listen.
Well, we know I don't get into certain guys. It's this team. It's all about the team. It's always been about the team. And that's what you appreciate. Those two guys you keep mentioning, Jamar and Joe.
Wrong clip. Hang on.
No, you're good. You're good.
Is Darren able to pinpoint what's going on with Evan right
No, that was the right clip. I'm sorry.
We just want to win, and so whatever we got to do as a team to find that, we got a lot of guys like that in this locker room that oftentimes don't get the credit that the other guys get that are laying it all out there to help us win. And so that's what drives me. Of course, you want to win I know it changes everybody's week when you win. Trust me. But at the same time, you just see the work that all these guys in this locker room put in. You want to win for them first and foremost because of the blood and sweat they put into it, the coaching staff that's here at all hours, and we put in. We just want to win as well. So feel what everybody feels, and we're continuing to find ways to do that.
Again, didn't give you much. Talked about the urgency to win, obviously trying to, there's a lot of guys putting in a lot of hard work behind the scenes. I do think people forget about that too when a team's losing. We think, well, they could be doing more. Sometimes you're limited with the talent that you have, and it doesn't mean that they're not working hard. Cam Taylor-Britt, it's not that he's not working hard. All right, it's not that Evan McPherson's not working hard behind the scenes trying to fix some of the issues that he has right now. But you hear Zach Taylor in the press conference yesterday, just your initial takeaway, of course. To his credit, he has a very calming presence about him right now. Your takeaways of Zach Taylor yesterday.
I've never doubted the team's effort. Like I don't think they're not trying. Now they might not try the rest of the season. I will see what happens. But up until this point, I've never questioned that Zach Taylor and the coaching staff try to win. I just don't think they've been good at it, and that's I guess the disconnect. And this is it's tough to talk about somebody's job like it's just like some easy sports talk segment. But it is like it's his job. It's how he provides for his family, and it's not a personal shot at Zach Taylor. But it's a win now league. It's an entertainment league. You choose to have this job. You choose to be in the public eye. So people have to talk about whether or not you're able to do it. And it's going to be up for debate as long as you're not winning Super Bowls. It's just what it is. Everybody knows that. That's why you get paid millions of dollars. Saying that, I think these press conferences week after week, I don't know what we have to expect out of him other than him just saying, we're just going to continue to try to find ways to win. We believe in our guys. We're going to I can only hear that so many times because we know that's your answer. So if that's the answer you're going to keep saying, then let's just not say it. Let's just keep to ourselves and we'll move on to next week. I did appreciate him saying that, he knows that these games mean a lot to us, the fan base. It makes our weeks, it breaks our weeks, whether or not they win. And God knows, Jacob knows that more than anybody. He has to watch every single thing on camera every week. But it's like, at some point, you can't do the same thing and expect different results. It just can't happen. So we'll see what happens towards the end of this season. I'd imagine the Bengals aren't going to win 6 games in a row. If they do, kudos to them. Kudos to the coaching staff. They live to fight another day. But even if they did do that, even if they won out, everybody would stay and nothing would change. So what does that accomplish? And I'd imagine this team isn't winning a Super Bowl. Obviously, it's still technically a possibility. Nobody actually believes it. I don't know. I don't put too much weight into these press conferences. I didn't do it with David Bell. I'm just going to say the same thing that I say after David Bell gives it, and it's that I'm just tired of hearing it. It's the same thing over and over again, whether or not they win or lose.
I would agree with you. It's definitely annoying and definitely is the same thing. I don't honestly know how much I blame Zach Taylor because how many different things can you say after you lose the same game 7 times?
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, they keep losing. Jay said it yesterday when he joined the show. They keep losing the same way. So it results in the same answers. It's incredibly frustrating for fans. But, I mean, what's he supposed to say? The defense sucks and I hate all those players?
Yeah.
We know he's thinking it. He can't say it to the media.
He was asked about Evan McPherson, however. Evan McPherson's struggles continue. And Zach Taylor asked about, their kicker, Evan McPherson. Take a listen.
Is Darren able to pinpoint what's going on with Evan right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously 2 opportunities Evan would like to have back. Yeah, internally, I think fundamentally those 2 can go through it. I won't get into it with you, but again, I have confidence in Evan. Evan's, I'm sure at this point his career has been through moments like this in his lifetime, and understands everything that's at stake and things he's got to improve on, and have a ton of confidence in Evan, and that's not changing on my end.
I don't know if he has been through that. I don't think he gets drafted if he's gone through stretches like that. So I don't know. Again, that was Zach Taylor, who's asked about a lot. He's asked a lot about, some of the issues on the defense, same answers every time. But the Evan McPherson problem, that's one that's gradually gotten worse as the season's gone on. We kind of knew early on this defense has problems. You guys were a little concerned about it in the preseason. Heading in, you just needed to see how it looked. It hasn't looked good from the very beginning. Evan McPherson, however, has gradually gotten worse as the season has gone on. I think that's one of the more glaring ones just because that's one of the few pieces the Bengals have, aggressively jumped the gun on and invested into financially. Your takeaways on the situation with the kicker McPherson at this point.
I think Zach has said without words many times this year that he doesn't believe in Evan McPherson. So it's kind of funny at this point after he continues to miss that he's saying to the media that he does believe in Evan McPherson. The craziest thing that I saw this weekend was neither of the misses. It was when the Bengals got the ball back. Evan McPherson was standing on the sidelines with his hands in his shoulder pads. Brother, you just missed 2 game-winning kicks, maybe kick into the net.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy what's going on with McPherson. After the game, he was dapping up Chargers players on the field in the back of an interview. When we saw the clips of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase walking off the field, it looks like their dogs just died. It's crazy the dynamic in the locker room when you hear Joe's answers after the game. Certainly doesn't seem like he's exactly bubbly with Evan right now and in the locker room. And we saw this earlier this year. After the miss against the Ravens, the clip of Evan in the locker room was all smiles, talking about how he's hitting the ball the best he's ever had in his career. It was a bad hold. They'll get it figured out, and everything will be good the rest of the year. he doesn't seem to be taking it seriously. And I know that's a pretty serious accusation to lay on a professional athlete, but I don't know how you can watch what's going on right now and really have any other take. It doesn't seem like these misses are affecting McPherson very much emotionally. And I know you want a kicker to be able to turn the page, have a short memory, move on, and hit the next one. But when you're one of the worst kickers in the league, you need to wallow in those misses a little bit and figure out what's going wrong. He seems to not really care.
I won't say that he doesn't care. I don't know how much you can sulk, because if you look dejected, if you look broken after every kick, after every missed kick, it's going to be hard to keep running you back out there, because everybody would know that you're in your head. And and when you're a kicker, it's a mental game. Right now he's going through the yips. I'm not going to compare it to golf, but everybody, when they play golf, you go through a stretch, a couple rounds in a row maybe, where you're hitting your drive right, dead right, and you can't fix it no matter what you do. Then you come out 3 weeks later and it's fixed. And you get a 4-week run where everything's fine, your game's great. Then you come back a week after that, the chipping game's gone. I think the golf and kicking has a lot of similarities, just because it's all a mental game. I don't think anybody believes in Evan McPherson for what it's worth right now, and you can't. I mean, there's no reason to believe in a guy who hasn't consistently made field goals this season, especially from distance. There's not one player in that locker room, I'd imagine, that believes Evan McPherson's going to go out and drill a 50-yard kick. They probably think he's going to make the 35 yards, not the 50. There's no way, because he's missed 4 in a row. How many 50-yarders has he made this year? 2? 2 for 8, 2 for 7, 2 for 6? I don't know what the number is, but it hasn't been good. So this is why these Zach Taylor press conferences, they do nothing for me, because all he said was, yeah, I believe in my guy. Nothing's going to change it. Well, I mean, if something has to change it, because if he can't make kicks on a consistent basis, then you have to figure out a different way to make or score points. That's a fact. We'll see what Evan does. I'm not even saying cut him. You can't cut him right now. You just paid him all the money. Every kicker does go through this. Justin Tucker's going through it right now. Now, I will say he had a Hall of Fame career before this little stretch. And if you take solace in anything, it's that kickers have been missing more the past couple of weeks. It has been a league-wide thing, despite the start of the season where it seems like every kicker was making every kick. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Zach Taylor, that might as well have been, he might as well not have said anything there.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much the theme, I think, with the press conference for the rest of the year. When you watch this team and you see as many holes as they have, Zach Taylor can't stand up there and address them, or it would make the team in the front office look abysmal. Because if you went down there and read down the list of the problems on this team, I mean, obviously starting with McPherson this year and going down the roster, everyone would have the same questions those of us that look into the team have. How did you build this roster and expect to stay afloat? So he's not going to do that, because the people that built the roster are the ones that can fire him. So You keep all that stuff relatively quiet. You keep saying you believe the guys you have in the room. You keep saying you're a bounce away, because in all honesty, they are. I mean, they've lost how many one-score games? They've had over 65% win probability in the last 8 minutes. I think it was 4 or 5 times, something like that. Just unbelievable what the Bengals have been able to do this year, and it result in losses. And I don't know what else Zach Taylor's able to say.
I'm at the point now where I do feel like, and it won't happen, but the NFL, really pro teams in general, I do believe if coaches have to do weekly press conferences, I think it should be a GM/head coach address to the media. Like, I think Duke Tobin needs to answer for a lot of stuff as well. Like, Zach's, and it never makes sense too. You throw the coach out there who doesn't make a lot of the roster decisions as far as how it's constructed. So you're giving the chef the horrible ingredients, and then when the chef makes a bad meal, the chef has to answer for why the meal doesn't taste good, but he's not the one that went and bought the groceries. I just feel like a lot of times GMs, especially at this point of the season when things are snowballing a bit, I think GMs need to step out there. I know he's not necessarily the general manager, but he acts as the general manager. I just think GMs need to be answering a lot of questions right now as well, instead of throwing your coaches out on an island to answer for a lot of mistakes that sometimes are out of their control. You want to question about a coaching decision, you want to question him about a lot of things, decisions, mistakes he makes throughout a game, great. But continuously asking him about certain schematics and just makeup of the roster, I think Duke Tobin needs to be answering some questions too, and not just standing next to Anthony Munoz in the second preseason game of every year or at the Combine. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And that's for all teams. I'm not taking a shot at the Bengals. I think all GMs need to be answering for stuff, good or bad, at this time of year.
I don't have any issue with the head coach being the mouthpiece, because that's part of the job. That is, like, when you sign up when you sign up for your $3 million contract or whatever the hell he's getting paid, that's in the contract. Like you have to answer for how your team plays, whether or not you make those decisions. I agree with you, Justin, that other people should also be. I think referees should be involved in press conferences because there's no reason that there's no reason that a ref shouldn't have to answer for some of the calls that they've made. I keep looking back to the no call on the face mask of Sam Darnold that ended that game a couple Thursday nights ago. And it doesn't make any sense. So why can't I ask a referee a question about how terrible that was? So more people should have them. But the fact of the matter is, I don't feel bad that Zach Taylor gets the blame here. You know what you sign up for. You are whether or not you are actually responsible. You are what we all are going to blame. It's just how it works. Same thing with David Bell. David Bell, I feel bad that he got fired and he lost his job, but I don't feel bad that people look at him and ask questions and have to point a finger at him. It's what you sign up for. It's why you get paid millions of dollars.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And sorry, go, Jacob. But yeah, I no doubt the coaches, I'm not advocating that the coaches shouldn't be asked questions. I just mean, the GMs always want to sit there. Yeah. GMs make a big trade. They make a big signing. They're there at the combine. They're there, during preseason. They love to be front and center. But man, when things start to go crazy, all of a sudden they disappear. Nick Kroll disappeared last year. But he was all over, media, doing media hits at the beginning of the season, disappeared once the season got there, or once the season started to unravel. But, is what it is, nonetheless. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We'll step away for a few moments, a little buy or sell action when we come back. Here's one to think about. All 4 head coaches in the AFC North will return with their respective teams next season, buy or sell. The Bengals should consider resting Joe Burrow if they lose to the Steelers coming out of the bye week. Buy or sell. The Buckeyes' championship hopes are squashed following the season-ending injury to their top offensive lineman. There's a lot. We'll throw a lot at you when we come back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Look at that backdrop. Look at Kenner's little bobbleheads there. Look at those bobbles. Welcome on in, ESPN. Actually, is this radio or is this going to be a non-radio?
This is on the radio.
Okay, radio. What's up?
We're radio
What's
hosts,
up, radio?
Elliot.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM. I'm Elliot Rearing, as you have heard for many a months now. So before we continue with this segment, I'm going to do a quick little ad read. We got to pay some bills, and one of those bills is for Champions Grill. We will be there tomorrow, live in person. Myself, Jacob, and Casey, maybe Reed, don't know yet. We will be there, and we will be talking about the Bengals, the state of the Bengals, whether or not they're able to make the postseason. I don't know. We're going to try to have fun with it. I think we're going to give mid-season grades, though.
We are. No. End of season.
End of season.
We're giving our end of season awards and our end of season grades on Thursday night.
Okay.
Don't get confused with all the other grades that are coming out. Those are all mid-season.
Those are all mid-season. We are declaring the season over, and we'll be doing our end of season awards. I got a crazy question last night on the Bengals show in the chat. Absolutely bonkers question that I think you could probably help us out with here.
Sure.
I was asked if this is the last time we're going to be at Champions.
The last time? No.
Of course not.
No, we're at Champions.
I don't know where that came from, but I got a question from our dear friend Colton. He said he wants to come down before the end of the year. He was looking at December. He said, is this the last time you guys are going to? Absolutely not. We're going every other Thursday the rest of the year.
We're riding it out, baby. I don't care how bad the Bengals are. We're riding it out. So starting on tomorrow at 7 p.m., we will be back at Champions Grill. It's Champions Grill with an E, on Work Road with an E. We were giving away Bengals tickets, so that's more incentive to come down. Whether or not the Bengals are good, that's up to you. But if you like to go to a game, we are giving away Bengals tickets. So be there tomorrow, 7 p.m., Champions Grill on Work Road. Everybody, I hope to see you there. It's going to be a fun time. Whether or not we talk about happy things on the show, probably not. But it's going to be a fun time because we're all going to suffer together. That's what it's about, being a fan of the Bengals.
I have
just suffering together.
That's right. And my goal was by Thursday, I wanted to find at least 3 paths for the Bengals to make the playoffs. I'm currently at 2. So I got to find one more tonight.
Okay.
And then I can start feeling good, and we can have a fun segment of how my completely messed up brain in the ESPN playoff machine has mapped out a couple routes for the Bengals to sneak in.
Okay. We're gonna need that kind of hope. We need more hope out of you.
Yeah.
Like you haven't had hope since like week 1, and it's been down ever since. Now that the season's over, you're going to try to bring the hope back.
It's funny because
that.
on here I have very little hope. I think it's a product of being in the morning, having to argue with Kinner every now and then, and all that good stuff. But on Chatterbox Bengals, I am notably the optimistic one.
Okay.
Craig has been out on the season much longer than I have, and I always get called the one that's way too positive in that chat. So it's a nice juxtaposition between the mornings and the nights.
Yes.
Me and Trace were talking yesterday just about we were talking about the Reds season's actually not too far off, and he goes, "My gosh, we were talking about Chatterbox Reds, and then we're talking about Kirby," and he goes, "Man, Trace was like, man, it's tough to stay positive through the whole way. Like he really has to like find ways to." And then we brought up the animal that is Nick Kirby, and that's not an insult. That guy, he's a machine, dude.
He is
like. He is Mr. Optimism every single show. And by the way, I'm jealous of that. I wish that I can continue to find the good in my teams, especially considering the teams I keep following. But luckily I have the Cavs. Luckily I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, my new team,
There you go. There you go.
Your favorite hoodie.
The favorite hoodie. By the way, Casey didn't read Everett's whole super chat earlier, so I'm going to read the entire thing.
Oh, you don't have to do this.
There's more.
Sorry your feelings got hurt, clown. Try not lying.
I didn't mean to lie, if that makes it any better. I swore I've worn it on the show before, but this isn't really something to like die on a hill and say, defend it. I didn't intend to lie. I apologize, It is what it is. It's just a damn hoodie.
Throughout this entirety, the entire show so far, and for the radio listeners, I'm very sorry for this whole segment. I've been looking. Oh yeah, we are. We deemed that this was a radio segment. So
oh yeah, we are.
I've been looking at this Google Doc nonstop. It's hilarious.
It's crazy.
The fact that you actually never worn anything resembling a Cavalier merchandise, and then yesterday was the first one on a 15-0 win streak, and you killed it. Laugh out loud funny. It's that whether or not it was actually because of you, I don't care. The narrative that I'm going to have is because it was you, and the fact that he did everything. He did everything.
But here's the thing. He says he sent every show. The likelihood that is every show. I mean, he could have found a day that I wore it, left that one day out. Everything else still blends in together. I swear I've worn it before.
I will check. I will check the tickers and match up the games on the bottom of the ticker with the week if we can get MLB or NFL games and match them up with the week and make sure.
But I don't line it up to yesterday. I'm not saying it was a coincidence, but I don't line it up to wear it on days that they play. I don't know. I'm doubling down.
So I'm gonna send you the link right now.
No, you're gonna have to check out the calendar in your free time.
I'm gonna send you the link right now. But listen, we've all cursed our teams a little bit. I cursed the Cincinnati Reds before this season happened because I went on a West Coast road trip with Trace and Nick. We destroyed the Cincinnati Reds season. That's a fact. Reed Mouse played 18 holes with Evan, said his score of 68 wasn't good enough. Serious golfers shoot below 60. We all know that. He told that to Evan, and it ruined his season. Reed cursed him. Jacob started doing Chatterbox Bengals this year. What would have happened to the Chatterbox Bengals, or what would have happened to the Bengals? They've been the worst of all time. Casey, he keeps mentioning FC Cincinnati. Now all their players hate him and want to leave. That's just what it is. We curse the city. And unfortunately, there's no way around it. We might have to get a priest in here or something to sprinkle some holy water on us. That's the only way out of this. That's the only way.
Yeah, maybe we declare bankruptcy like Michael Scott and just rename it.
Mousecop wants to mention that all Cincinnati professional teams have losing records since Kinner started off the bench.
That's another just crazy thing he did. He went through and counted every single team, including the Cyclones, and their record since your first show on Off the Bench, and they've all had a losing record.
This is wild. It doesn't stop.
Crazy.
I mean, no show.
Do you give him a little bit of credit for that?
You have to.
give him a little bit of credit.
to.
I mean, it's like it's all organized perfectly. Like it's in a chart.
He said he took 30 minutes.
30 minutes. You dedicated 30 minutes to this. All right, more power to you. I have worn this shirt a few times though. I've at least counted 3.
You're gonna start going back to look to diversify your wardrobe. You're gonna be like, "Oh, what shirt? I've worn this shirt a lot. Maybe Mouse, can you make me one of those so I don't repeat outfits?"
I was a backwards hat guy back in August. That's
you're just a chiller. You're just a cool guy.
Wow.
You're just a cool guy hanging out.
I'm trying to fit in with the youth. There you go. Man, there's no kidding. Oh, that was when I was in Florida.
Yeah,
I mean, this is like how I proved to Trace how much I've worked.
Yeah, no, this is a positive for Kinner, I think.
By the way, we have 7 minutes left in this segment, so we got to do some buy or sells.
This is it's not a segment.
We end this and then we do the buy or sell segment.
Okay, is that how you?
This is not on the radio.
This is not on the radio.
No.
Okay, all right. I was just okay. We don't have to be on the radio.
All right.
We'll clip this for YouTube.
Actually, probably won't.
Standalone video.
Standalone video. The guys talk about nothing.
Kinner's wardrobe. Oofa.
That's right.
All right, bring us back.
Let's go back to Radioland.
All right.
From now on, every time we start the show, and Elliot wearing the hoodie with the Hilton Head logo on the front, Elliot Rearing.
Well, I mean, you could just go back and mouse.
What's that?
You could go back to Mount. You could go back to Mouse Cop's thing, and you could. I'm sure there's several on there.
If we screenshot every outfit you've worn, how many times since Kinner started hosting the show do you think you've worn that hoodie?
I would say since July, probably 10 times. 10 times, yeah.
So line 9.5 or line 10.5?
Maybe less. I think less. Actually,
we came back to radio and we kept going with the wardrobe conversation.
Yeah, we could have kept going the last segment. I bet under 10 though. I bet under 10.
Fair enough. We welcome you back to this really serious sports talk show that is called Off the Bench. We appreciate our sponsor, United Dairy Farmers, unless they jump off because of the shenanigans as of late. But nonetheless, buy or sell, folks. Zach Taylor, I know a lot of you are out on Zach Taylor, but I think you know how the Cincinnati Bengals operate. The likelihood of him being on the sidelines for the Bengals next year pretty high. Jacob feels very confident about that. Jay Morrison came on yesterday and pretty much assured that. But, you look at the AFC North, and stability at head coach in that division has actually been pretty dang impressive. Buy or sell that in 2025, all 4 AFC North head coaches will remain with their current teams. Buy or sell?
I'm going to buy it. 2 of them are absolute locks. Tomlin and Harbaugh are certainly not going anywhere. I would imagine, with the way that I think the situation is shaken out in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski had asked to bench Deshaun Watson time after time and was told no by the ownership and front office. If that is the case, he will be the coach next year. If he pushed for Deshaun Watson to be the starting quarterback at any point in time, he will not be. Because I don't think he did, I'm going to buy this, because I also have 100% certainty in Zach Taylor. I think it only relies on Stefanski, and I think the only way he's fired is if he's the one that was pushing for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that all four coaches are back. Unless the Bengals lose out, that's the only way you can start talking about Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I think he can win like 2 more, like 6-11.
Oh, well, that might actually happen though.
Yeah, you could be gone at 6-11.
Yeah, I don't think Zach Taylor's going to be fired yet. I will say there's a chance they fire him midseason next year if you start 0-3 again. I know the Bengals don't fire coaches midseason and all that. That's one where I think you would have to save what's left of Joe Burrow's career in Cincinnati. Outside of that, I don't think Stefanski gets fired because I think he was held hostage and he did what he was told, as Jacob just said. I don't think he was pushing for Deshaun because nobody was pushing for Deshaun. Except for apparently the front office all those years ago. Outside of him, the world unanimously wanted him benched. So I don't blame Stefanski. He'll be back, and he's a good head coach. The rest of the 2 we know are good coaches. So everybody's going to come back.
Zach Taylor, I don't think it's the loss that is that would be the most alarming. It's not a team that they would lose to. It's the locker room. Zach Taylor will be safe regardless of how many losses they have moving forward, assuming that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase don't quit on him. But Jamar Chase has been Jamar Chase is losing patience with Zach probably more than Joe Burrow, or at least Joe Burrow does a better job of hiding it, if you will. But for the second time this season, during a tough stretch, Jamar Chase has, I don't want to say aggressively thrown the head coach under the bus, but he said things in post games that most players don't say about their head coach that we don't think is something. So as far as buying or selling this, I think Zach's back next year. I agree with you guys, unless he loses the locker room. I don't think it's a loss of a game. I think it's a losing of the locker room that would change that, but I think he's back. Kevin Stefanski, I'm not very confident will be back next year, and it's not because I don't think he's a good coach or not that I don't want him to be there. There's a lot of rumblings in Cleveland that there's some weird stuff going on based on the ownership, that there's some tension on the sidelines because of Mike Vrabel being there. Keep in mind, the defense has not been great for the Cincinnati Bengals, but Mike Vrabel for the first time was on the sideline this past Sunday, headset on, and I don't think he's looking over the shoulder of course, the defensive coordinator for Cleveland. Why else would you have the headset on if you're not monitoring what's going on from a head coaching standpoint? Vrabel being in the Cleveland organization was a big deal. I thought that was a very interesting get. He could have gone to any organization to work with the personnel in the league, and he went to Cleveland. Got to wonder what's been said to him. Maybe possibilities have been told to him. I think I'm going to sell it. I think that Mike Vrabel could be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns next year, just based on some of the rumblings going around. Mainly because maybe Stefanski doesn't want to come back. Stefanski's probably pretty fed up with a lot of stuff.
There'd be a long line to hire Kevin Stefanski. He wouldn't be waiting long. Do you think Mike Vrabel is a better head coach for the current NFL than Kevin Stefanski?
Like all of these, I think Bill Belichick's still a great head coach in the NFL, just depending on who your offensive coordinator is.
But who would you rather have as the head coach of your team, not excluding the Browns situation and what they've already been through with Stefanski? Yep. Would you rather have Stefanski or Vrabel?
I'd rather have Vrabel.
If both are on the market, and say for Cincinnati or something like that.
I love Vrabel, but I will say, if they're about to draft a rookie quarterback, I want Kevin Stefanski.
I think it's pretty distantly Stefanski.
I think it's Stefanski, but if you have a quarterback like the Bengals do already set up, I agree with Justin in that situation. Like I don't want Vrabel, bringing up a rookie quarterback, but if he comes into a set situation like the Bengals have per se, then I would love Mike Vrabel here.
Yeah, I would also like Mike Vrabel here, but I would like Mike Vrabel here because I have a lot of faith in Dan Pitcher and the offense that he's trying to run. So I think that's the thing you have to look into with Vrabel or Belichick when you go either of those routes. If any team goes either of those routes this offseason, it's a two-person hire. I mean, you're hiring them, and then you have to focus really hard on who you're going to hire as your offensive coordinator, because we know offense still drives this league, even though you need defenses to win.
All right, moving on. We'll stay with the Bengals. Obviously, a bye week. The Cincinnati Bengals playoff chances are a little bleak right now, but if they lose to the Steelers, it's going to be a whole new world of conversation, or maybe very similar to our conversations now, because some of you feel like they're out, right? If they lose to the Steelers coming out of the bye week, buy or sell that the Bengals should consider resting Joe Burrow for the remainder of the season?
Consider buy.
Yeah, we'd all want them to.
Oh.
Buy.
Take the we out of there.
Oh, you don't want them to?
You don't want them to.
You don't want them
You're
to?
why
I want them to bench Joe Burrow if we lose to the Steelers.
Oh, I'd be okay if they benched Joe Burrow if they lost to the Steelers.
Okay, you just said we don't want them to.
No, we want them to. I said we want them to.
Oh, we do.
I think I said that. I said we want them to.
Correct.
If they have nothing to play for, and certainly they have nothing to play for if you lose another game to the Steelers. But I don't think that's not a real conversation that's going to be had. Joe Burrow is going to be out there and he's going to play. He might be grumpy and he might pout, but he's going to be out there and he's going to play.
Do I want Joe Burrow bench if we lose to the Steelers? Absolutely no question about it. I can't bear watching him be put under the turf in games that don't matter. Will Joe Burrow be benched? 0% chance. Because if Zach Taylor walks into Joe Burrow's locker and says, hey, Joe, you're not playing the rest of the year, Zach Taylor will be fired before he gets out of that locker room.
Correct.
Joe Burrow will not let that happen. We've seen time and time again how much of a competitor Joe Burrow is. The Bengals are sitting at 4-7, and the media was tweeting yesterday as they went to interview coaches. Kinner asked Jay yesterday on his way to the facility. Jay mentioned that they were only interviewing coaches, and it was reported that the players' lot was empty. Joe Burrow's car. He was meeting with Dan Pitcher basically all day yesterday. So he's incredibly committed on turning this season around, and there's still a sliver of hope. I think 18% or 13% playoff chances, depending on where you look. So definitely the window's still open, just a crack to get into the playoffs. And as long as it is, Joe Burrow won't let them bench him. And with one loss, they still won't be mathematically eliminated. So they would not bench Joe Burrow until they're mathematically eliminated. And then you're benching him for what, 2 or 3 games? In which case, why even do that? I understand protect the injury, but it would piss him off so much that I wouldn't risk it. Especially with how the season's going, you got to worry about that relationship anyway.
Talk about losing the locker room. That would lose everything.
Yeah.
You lose it all if you do that move.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, Joey Galloway's little take on Rourke, the quarterback for Indiana earlier, that was such a wild one. Again, sit him against the Buckeyes to avoid him getting hurt. But, it's a completely different scenario here. But these things are always talked about. Can you guys, and maybe there's an obvious one, when's the last time an NFL team just said, hey, we're out of the playoffs, we're just going to bench you? Now, they could have done it maybe hiding behind an injury or something, I don't know. But the quarterback would have to agree to do it and not speak out against it. Can you think of a time where, I know we say this, oh man, maybe they should sit him, rest him to avoid injury. You get injured in November, December, and it's a year-long recovery. Now you're not coming back till November of next season. That's always the big concern, getting hurt at this time of year, if it's severe, of course. But has there been a time that you can remember where a team just, hey, we're out of it, let's just rest our starting quarterback to avoid, any disaster like that?
Monetarily, absolutely. It happened in Denver with Russell Wilson. They pulled him when they were eliminated to protect from their injury guarantee there. It happened just 2 days ago with the Giants. They benched Daniel Jones for the remainder of the season because they have a $23 million injury guarantee if he's unable to pass a physical in March. So they're going to be able to cut him and save that money at the end of the season. But I can't think of a situation where it's happened with a player that the team doesn't intend on cutting. When it's happened with a star quarterback that's going to be your starter the next year. The only time I can think of with that is when the Eagles were playing a few years ago in the final week of the season, and they pulled Jalen Hurts for, I believe it was Nate Sudfeld in week 18, and they basically threw that game to protect Jalen Hurts, and then they missed the playoffs to get a better draft pick. But that was purely tanking in the last week of the season. We're talking about a 4-week benching. I don't think this is something we've ever seen from a quarterback that's not hurt and not going to get cut.
No, because no quarterback would ever willingly take themselves out of the captain's seat. Nobody would ever do that, except for Anthony Richardson.
Well, Anthony Richardson, damn it, you got me. And again, it would be unique because, again, benching Daniel Jones is one thing. Daniel Jones's play kind of made it easy to do it. Russell Wilson wasn't playing at an elite level. Joe Burrow, when's the last time you would look at a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Lamar, or that caliber of a quarterback and say, we're out of it? Get over on the sidelines, nonetheless. All right,
well, this goes back to the conversation we've had with the Bengals as a whole this season. When's the last time a healthy quarterback as good as Joe Burrow missed the playoffs? No one's ever in this situation.
Yep.
So, of course, it's never happened.
Yeah, it's all of this is just very unique, what's happening in Cincinnati this season, no doubt. Buy or sell, Nick Chubb is no longer an elite running back. Buy or sell?
Well, I hate the Browns as much as the next guy. Nick Chubb's one of the easiest people in the entire NFL to root for. His recovery from the knee injury at Georgia, clawing back to play in the NFL at such a high level, another knee injury last year, gruesome injury, and clawing back to play in the NFL this year. It's a great story. I think he'll be in the NFL for a few more years at least. He's not Nick Chubb anymore. I'm selling that he's still an elite running back, still a top-tier running back. I think he'll be a meaningful piece for a good offense, but I think the days of him being a locked-in top 3 to 5 running back or so in the league are behind him, sadly.
He went through one of the more gruesome injuries I've ever seen.
Twice.
And it's and unfortunately, it's not like, basketball, if you hurt your leg, you still need, your arm's got to be good to shoot. Running back, you need your 2 legs, and I fear that the injury was too much for him to overcome. It's great that he's back out there. It's great that he's playing, but the explosive Nick Chubb that we've seen in the past, the best running back in the league, Nick Chubb, that we've seen in the past, that guy's gone. I'm selling that he's still a significant factor as a running back. In fact, what do you think the Browns do next season? Because the running back room, I don't think they ride with Jerome Ford. I think it's got to be – they have to bring somebody in, I'd imagine, in the offseason.
Yeah. One of those two, if the Browns, win a couple more games and they're picking in that 8 to 12 range or 8 or further back, I think Gentry becomes a legitimate possibility for Cleveland, as wild as that sounds. I'm not saying it's the right – or I don't think it's – I wouldn't be angry at it. I think that there's other holes that they need to address. I'm still not a fan of any quarterback in this draft. I still think you go one more year with, obviously with Jameis, and then reevaluate the quarterback classes for next year in the draft.
There's only one guy to evaluate next year. If you are picking top 5 and you pass on a quarterback this year, it's very clear what's happening in Cleveland, and you're going to go 0-17 and take Arch. There's going to be a generational tank off in 2025 for Arch Manning. It is going to be something we have never seen before, with teams absolutely packing it in like May to draft Arch Manning. It's going to be crazy.
That'd be wild. And look, the Haslams have a good relationship with old Manning. There's a connection there. There is. I'm just saying, like the Tennessee connection.
Could you imagine if the Browns screwed up the Manning bloodline? Oh, God.
My. Well, the two organizations that have been linked to tanking for him next year already, Browns and Giants, are the two listed.
Oh, I'd love to see him the Giants.
Lose with the purpose,
I would
baby.
love to see Arch Manning throwing to Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Lose with the purpose, baby.
That's right.
That's right there. No,
is there any quarterback that you'd take for the Browns if he fell far enough?
I'd take a couple in the top 5 out of the Browns. I'd take Shadur or Cam Moore in the top 5. Quarterback's too important. But I understand the other needs and tanking for the next. You're throwing away a full season if you don't take a quarterback there, in my opinion.
And that's if they decide that you get Gentry, who makes an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Who knows? By the way, Cleveland, they have too many holes to fill. As far as Nick Chubb, I don't. It's sad, but I don't think he's an elite running back anymore. Look, at first I was like, well, he needs a few games to kind of get. He's played 5 games at this point, 163 total yards in 5 games combined. He scored 1 touchdown, and that was the first game back against Cincinnati back in October. So, yeah, I think maybe he can get it going at some point. He showed a little bit of burst against New Orleans this past Sunday. But who knows if he can return to form as far as that goes. We close out off the bench, at least on the radio side. When we come back, more buy or sell next.
We could buy or sell Shadur to Dallas. There was a little bit more news on that today that I could bring up if we.
All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Bissett with you here as we close out the radio portion of the show. Buy or sell will continue on. Indiana, 13.5-point dog against Ohio State heading into this weekend's top 5 showdown, at least according to ESPN Bet. Buy or sell Indiana covering against Ohio State this Saturday. Buy or sell?
You want me to take this one?
You got it.
All right, yeah. Sell him for all I'm worth. Sell him for all I'm worth. I'm on 19.5, 29.5. I actually cashed out the 12.5 I had yesterday because of Seth McLaughlin's injury, but it didn't move. I thought it was going to move a little bit, so I just rebet it. Yeah, no, they're going to roll this weekend. Absolutely dominate.
I got to see if it's a system. Let's see if it's a system. Casey, do we know this answer?
I personally think Indiana should bench their starting quarterback.
It is a system. It is a system, but it's a system for the Ohio State University. So
people are betting Indiana.
Everyone's betting Indiana plus 13. God,
what
sick.
Idiots!
You're
what
sick.
big dumb idiots!
You're a
Oh my
sicko.
God!
You're
Ohio
a
State
sicko.
is going to obliterate that organization. Signetti's going to be sitting on the sideline saying, "Why did I sign that extension to just get beat by these guys year after year after year?" Oh, it's going to get old fast. Yeah, sell it. It's not even going to be close.
I'm going to sell it now, too, now that I know it's a system. I'll take the Ohio State Buckeyes, minus 13.
Covering, I don't know if they get blown out. I don't think they'll cover, though. I think 17-21 is going to be this Ohio State winning by. I as good as Ohio. Look, we know how dominant Ohio State is, but the one thing about Indiana, the last time they faced a team, Ohio State, that could pass the football, it didn't go so well. And I'm not saying Indiana's offense is Oregon's offense, but Indiana has a quarterback that can throw the football. They have a couple capable wide receivers. Yeah. Ohio State's defense looked dominant against Penn State, but no one really buys into Penn State's offense being anything special. There's not a lot of good offenses in the Big Ten, so they rarely get challenged through the air. And when they have been challenged through the air, the secondary for Ohio State has not been very elite. That's my concern. And I do think Indiana can make enough plays through the air that it could put Ohio State's back against the wall at times. And, we don't know how much of an impact the loss of the center is going to be for Ohio State. I'd like to believe that this team is just too talented that they can't just overcome that against a team like Indiana. Indiana has a chance to prove that they're for real. I don't think they cover, but I don't think they get beat by 30 either. I think they're going to make it interesting for some of the game, and I think they could pass on Ohio State's defense. That's going to be the thing. They can't run the football, though. They can't balance it out. Ohio State runs away with it. But I think they have a chance. There's no good passing offensive teams in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State at this point. And this team presents a potential challenge for Ohio State because they just don't see those teams in the Big Ten.
I think Indiana is going to be shocked by the skill and talent on the outside with Ohio State. And I mean that, and I know I've been making a whole joke out of this game and everything. Their schedule is legitimately 105th in the country. Most of these players that are stars on this team are transfers from James Madison that Cignetti had there, recruited there, under-recruited guys that are playing at a really, really high level this year. They've got to 10-0. That's not something to take lightly. They have not played this level of talent. And if you get to 10-0 in the Big Ten, usually at least once or twice you've played a team with at least glimpses of this level of talent. Not only is this Ohio State team more talented on paper than the average Ohio State team, the rest of the Big Ten is less talented than it normally is outside of Oregon. So I think Indiana is going to be legitimately shocked on the outside when they're lined up across from these Ohio State corners. The thing that it's going to come down to me, Justin, is kind of what you're saying there when we've gone up against high-powered passing offenses. It's not going to be blown coverages, in my opinion. It's going to be Igbinosun getting penalties. He leads the country in penalties on the outside, number one, Ohio State's second cornerback. That's going to be a problem against the Indiana team that throws the ball a lot. If you can keep your hands down, no penalties in the game, Ohio State's going to be able to get stops. But you can't give up free yardage for Indiana because the offense is too good. They're the best offense Ohio State's going to play, not named Oregon or Penn State this year.
Yep, and keep in mind, Michigan's a bad team. They have NFL players on defense.
Absolutely.
17-28 for 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick against Michigan, who I think has a better defense than Ohio State. But again, we're going to find out Saturday. This matchup is very intriguing. Moving on, again, buy or sell. Shedeur Sanders will be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. Buy or sell?
So I've been reading up on some of the things that Jacob said, and I saw that Michael Irvin,
Sure,
came out and said that Deion Sanders would take the job if they offered it to him. Now, if they go out and draft his son, I'd imagine they might offer Deion the job. I think there might be a chance. Would you want that kind of show, though, in Dallas? Because we see the distraction it's been having in Colorado. I will say he's done a great job at Colorado, there's no doubt. Bringing that program back to relevance for the first time. Actually, it's probably the only time they've been relevant. So having him be able to do that there, you would obviously want – Deion Sanders is a great football coach. You'd want him in Dallas. But in that media market with Deion and his son, would you want that? That's the only thing I would say, and I would say if that's the scenario, Deion would accept it. That's the only way I see Shedeur going to Dallas, is if they have a pseudo plan to also get Deion to be the head coach.
There's a massive hurdle in there that you didn't mention, and it's the only reason I'm selling this as a whole. I think if they didn't have a $60 million quarterback on the first year of that extension he just signed with his hamstring not on his bone, they would probably draft Shedeur and Deion. It's going to be really, really hard to find someone to take that contract coming off a gruesome injury like this one. This is a surgery on a hamstring for a quarterback that relies on, limited mobility. He's going to throw the ball 50 times a game in an ideal offense for Dak Prescott. You need those legs to be mobile in the pocket. A hamstring popping off the bone is not something to take lightly. I think it's going to be a struggle for them to find someone that takes Dak's contract. I said yesterday that I thought there was a 0% chance. I think that's a little bit higher now. It was reported this morning that Shedeur Sanders will pass on the Senior Bowl and go to the 100th East-West Shrine Bowl, which, of course, is hosted in AT&T Stadium and has heavy connections to Jerry Jones and the Jones family. The top senior quarterback almost always goes to the Senior Bowl. I couldn't remember the last time that they weren't in Mobile, Alabama, Shedeur going to the East-West Shrine game. Certainly interesting, certainly something to keep an eye on. I think maybe cracking this door open a little bit more than I thought yesterday.
But I also don't Kirk Cousins had the 3-year deal and they still drafted a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think if you look at least Shedeur, you're going to sit for at least one season. And then next year, if Dak is too hurt to play, or if there's no plan, just maybe then you get in after a year or two and you watch. But I don't know if Shedeur would accept that sort of deal. I'd imagine probably not, that he agrees to be a benched quarterback for 2 seasons.
My only issue with that is Dak Prescott's cap hit in 2027, so it would be the 3rd year of Shedeur's career. You're going into the last year of his rookie contract the next year. Dak's cap hit in 2027 is $63 million.
Oh, boy.
Like, this isn't a Kirk Cousins situation where you have a 2-year out if that rookie gives you a lot that you like and you can cut him after 2 years for no guaranteed money. They're locked into Dak through at least 2027 with massive, massive cap hits. And I expect after this injury for them to restructure that contract, spread it out over more years to alleviate some of those cap hits. Because as of right now, he has $151 million in dead cap next year, $89 million cap hit. They're not going to operate with that. They're going to restructure this contract. So it's going to go even further. They need someone who's going to be willing to take all, if not the vast majority of that contract in a trade. I think the only team that might be stupid enough to do so is the Giants, but they are out there and they do need a quarterback.
Yeah, spot track, whatever that is.
Yep.
He says Dak Prescott has $104 million of if traded dead cap, and he has the most important thing, a full no trade clause.
Yeah, so he would have to accept any trade.
And
that's why people are circling the NFC East, is because he would want to stick it to the Cowboys if they moved him. That's the only reason the Giants keep getting brought up.
All right, last one on the way out. College basketball. Saw the Bearcats, top 25 team in the country, get a win last night on the road against a mid-major team in Northern Kentucky. Oh, they beat a mid-major team. To go on the road, as you heard Wes Miller say earlier, that's tough to do, to go on the road, even though it's in your backyard a little bit, to go on the road and take on a mid-major team where you're going to get their best shot with their home fans behind them. I thought it was an impressive win, the way they started out slow and were able to get it together late. A win last night, but a lot of expectations for Wes Miller and the Bearcats this season. And, of course, everyone hates Xavier when it's all said and done, Elliot. So buy or sell Cincinnati's season, well, finishing after Xavier's. Buy or sell Cincinnati having a deep NCAA tournament run while Xavier sits at home and watches.
You added a couple words there at the end. I think UC's team is better this year than it's been in like 10 seasons. It's maybe not 10, but a little less than 10. It's phenomenal. This is a phenomenal roster. If there's ever a year that the Bearcats can beat Xavier in the crosstown shootout, it's this year. Xavier has owned Cincinnati for many years, since like 2000, since maybe before 2000. It's been Xavier's game to lose. And I do think there's a chance that this roster is able to make a tournament run. You lose Dan Skillings for a couple weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. We don't know yet. Everybody's targeting that Xavier game might be the return of Dan Skillings. So I don't know. I think if you watched the game last night, the defense was atrocious. The rebounding wasn't very good for the Bearcats. But they can shoot, man. They can shoot. And Simas Lukosius, I made the joke last week with Keegan after he got hit by a car, which is terrible. After he got hit by a car, he has become incredible. He's been and this is I know he hasn't really played anybody. The competition, I'm not going to say, has been good so far. Saying that, what he's done is awesome. He shot 8 for 10 game 1, 6 for 7 game 2, 7 for 11, 6 for 9. He is shooting over 75%. His 3-point percentage is unbelievable. 3 for 5, 2 for 2, 5 for 7, 6 for 9. The threes he made last night were absurd. He made 6 threes last night. All his points were off 3-pointers last night. 18 points. 18, 19, 14, 20. He's the go-to scorer. He's the go-to scorer of the Bearcats, and that's with the addition of Dylan Mitchell. That's with the insane point guard that is Jizzle James. I don't know. I'm more high on this Bearcats team than I've been on a team in maybe my lifetime. I'm really excited. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to say UC has a longer season than Xavier this year for the first time seemingly ever. But, yeah, I couldn't be more in on the Bearcats right now. If they can – I mean, Aziz Bandego only having 4 rebounds and then 0 rebounds the last game. That's got to change. He's got to get more boards. Dan Skillings is a big rebounder for the team, so not having him is crucial. But they're able to score in a way that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. Even with the MIC teams, those teams that were really, really good, they would also have the games that they'd win like 51-48. Like, that's not what this Bearcats team is. They're going to score 80 a night, 75 a night. And I love their chances of making a tournament run because those are the teams that make those runs, the teams that are able to score at high volume at will, and that's what they are. Last night, 76-60, not the prettiest win in the world, but as you said, it's a gutsy win. It's a win that takes a little bit of gumption to go out there and pull away like they did. So good for the Bearcats. I'm all in, baby.
Let's go Muskies.
Boo.
Axe deep run. And just one game further than the Bearcats.
Just one.
Just one.
Just one.
Just one.
All right, that wraps it up for us here on the radio side. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and tuning in. Me and Mouse Cop, we're going to go get a few beers and hang out. And then till tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Box lunch.
Boom, 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 boom.
You talk about the Bearcats, Elliot.
Boom, boom.
When Cincinnati was announced that they were going to the Big 12, I know everyone talks about football right away, but I was most excited about what that meant for the basketball program because Cincinnati's always been a very good basketball program, and now to put them on that stage, where you're going to get even recruits now. Hey, that's a power forward team. I think that's going to over a high major team now. That's I think going to be a big push for them. I think Cincinnati basketball is going to benefit more than anything from, of course, moving up to the Big 12.
Yeah, no question. Cincinnati basketball is a hell of a job.
One of the best jobs in the country.
It's good.
Nice.
Yeah, I like I said, we'll see as this season develops what this Bearcats team is all about as we play, no offense to NKU, real opponents. And by the way, them making a rivalry them making a rivalry out of nothing is the silliest thing I've ever seen. I mean, that's just nonsense.
It's the rumble in the river.
The River Rumble.
River Rumble.
See, here's where you're a hypocrite.
He did.
Here's where Elliot's the hypocrite. Because in football, you know that like when Jake and I talk about Ohio State, then we take shots at Florida State, we take shots at the little guy. Elliot is disgusted. He's uncomfortable.
He writhes around in his chair.
Yeah, look what you're doing now to the little guy. Northern Kentucky, not a real program. Northern Kentucky is actually a very good mid-major basketball program. It's one of the best mid-major programs in the country. I have no clue why you're.
I'm despair. Kinner, they're 0-4. What do you want me to say? You want me to say they're having a good year?
No, I'm not saying that they're a good team this season, but they're not a bad program. I think they're a very good mid-major program.
Sure, and I'm not disparaging a small market a mid-major program. I'm not just and here's the best part about college basketball. NKU is going to have a very good shot to go to the tournament this year and have a probably decent shot at winning a tournament game. No doubt about it. That's not.
That's a little too much. Now that's a little too much. See, now you went all the way to the other side. Middle ground.
That's what I'm not. I'm just saying that you don't like get respect in the college bet. UC lost a spot in the rankings this week. It's not because they were playing good teams. It's because they're playing the little sisters of the poor that get no respect in terms of rankings. That's a fact.
I just get I'm only defensive of the little guy when it comes to mid-major basketball.
I'm a defender of the little guy. That's why I love college basketball more than anything, is because the little guy has as much of a shot as the big guy.
College football has more different champions than college basketball in the last decade.
I know, but if you make the tournament, you have a chance.
That's not true.
It is. It is true. It is true.
You can't look me in the eye and tell me 60 of the 64 teams have a chance.
Mathematically, if you make the tournament, you have a chance.
You know that's not a good argument.
There is a 0.00000% chance for some of the programs when they start their season.
They have the same chance as some of the teams that make the tournament, and you know it. Until very recently, a 16 seed had never beaten a 1. Those teams do not have a chance to win a championship. They don't. You're lying to yourself.
They have a chance.
They don't.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Do you believe that they have 1% chance to win the championship?
Yes.
You're lying to yourself.
St. Peter's got to the Elite Eight, brother.
And they didn't have a chance to win the championship.
What are we doing? Because you've seen teams do it.
I haven't. I've never seen a team that lowly ranked win a championship. I've never seen that.
FAU getting to the Final Four. Didn't George Mason get to a Final Four?
Did they win the championship? No, they don't have a shot.
But you know that it's vastly different, and you know that.
There's more different teams that have a chance to win a championship in football than basketball. That's why we've seen more champions in the last decade.
You know it's vastly different. You know that.
Right. Football's a better system.
You're making a silly argument because you know that.
Who has more champions? How's a better way to see how many teams can win a championship? How many teams have done it in the last decade?
Because there's also different accomplishments in basketball.
You're the one that diminishes the other accomplishments in football. I don't.
Yeah, because a bowl game's nonsense.
That's your opinion.
That's not my opinion.
It is your opinion.
Fact. Nobody plays
Players
bowl games.
and coaches care about
it's
it.
Pity. It's a pity. Here, you won 500
and
have a bowl.
The number 1 and number 3 overall pick in 2022 played in the bowl game for Alabama, and they won the game.
That's very good. They've
Good
established.
schools,
They've
good
established.
cultures
They've
play in the
established.
bowl game.
Correct. If you have a great coach and a great culture, good
Right.
for you. Nobody.
Mid-major
let's not
schools
be silly.
love winning bowl games.
Bowl games are nonsense. Bowl games are nonsense.
It can change programs. Mid-major, small schools winning bowl games changes their program. It means everything to those schools. To act like everyone plays for a national championship, it's just not true.
See, the only
Mr. Mo,
argument, Jake,
Mr. Mo, it is not a pity achievement. You won the conference. What are you talking about? You won the conference. You got into the tournament.
That's absolutely a here's your bone. You don't have a chance to win a championship.
But
to act like any 16 team has a chance to win a championship, it's incredibly crazy.
But here's the thing, though. Bowling Green football will never win a national championship.
0.00000 into infinity.
Wright
They
State,
also have a chance to
Wright
make
State,
the 12-team playoff.
Wright State basketball has a better chance of winning a national title in basketball than Bowling Green or any MAC school does in football.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think they have the exact same chance. Bowling Green goes 12-0. They're in the playoff. They're the 12 seed. It's the same thing as Wright State making the NCAA tournament as the 8 or 9 seed. They'll never win it.
You think Bowling Green?
If Bowling Green went 12-0,
no, 12-0 in the MAC.
Bowling Green went to A&M and Penn State this year. If they went 12-0, they'd absolutely be in.
But they're not going to go 12-0 if they do go to those. That's the point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is in UC went 12-0. They had one good game on their schedule. They went 12-0. They made the playoff. They didn't have a chance to win a championship.
If Indiana loses to Ohio State because of how bad their schedule is, we're literally having conversations about how they lose one game and they're completely out.
Boise State lost a game, and they're going to be in the playoff and probably have a bye.
Boise State was competitive, and Boise State's good.
Well, that's
but Boise State, the Mountain West is not the MAC. The Mountain West is still not the MAC.
A MAC team can absolutely make that group of 5 spot in the playoff. Absolutely. No question about it.
Lots of questions.
Miami was one of the favorites before the season. The MAC favorite was one of the favorites to make that group of 5 spot preseason. It hasn't shaken out that way. The MAC hasn't been as good, but Miami was one of the top teams to make that group of 5 spot preseason.
Well, you know what they say. Someone's going to win it.
Yeah.
I just disagree. This is bullshit. I'm so angry. We're yelling and screaming and fighting now. See what you did, Elliot?
I guess so. Listen, I guess so.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We're done. I got to bounce. I got to go conduct an interview. So until then, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right. See you guys.